I have here two of the most popular aged spirits the world over: bourbon, cognac. I was doing a training a few days ago and my very apt pupils were like, can we talk a little more about that whiskey, like that cognac you showed us? I said, whoa, what you mean whiskey? I then realized that I did not do my job. First of all, let's get one thing straight. Cognac is not whiskey, and I'm about to tell you why. To understand these, which are distilled spirits, we have to first understand fermented spirits. Fermentation is the grandfather to distillation and really important to human history because when water was not safe, wine was. Same thing with beer. Both of these substances were considered to be the world's first superfood. To ferment, what do you need? You need water, sugar, carbon dioxide, yeast. Fermentation is simply the breakdown of a substance by a bacteria. The lovely bacteria used in most fermentation is yeast. The yeast eats the sugar and it produces effervescence and alcohol. That alcohol is essentially sterile when you produce it, and it's not going to do all the terrible things that the water could have done to you. But fermentation comes first, and that's just the yeast eating the sugar. Once we get our product, if it's made from a fruit, it's usually going to be called a wine or possibly a cider. And if it's made from a grain, it's going to be called a beer. If we want to get distilled spirits, all we have to do is take these bad boys, heat them up, cool them down, heat them up, cool them down, heat them up, cool them down. The only thing distilling is a process by which we turn the alcohol in these substances into vapors with heat. The heat rises and then we cool it back down and turn it back into a liquid. Anything that is fermented starts as a beer or a wine. Your favorite whiskey house makes a beer, but it's called the wort or the mash. Anything made from a fruit is considered a brandy. There's a whole category of brandies called eau de vie. And incidentally, eau de vie, eau, water, D, of vie, life. That tells you how important that stuff was. From fermentation to distilling. Fermentation starts off as a beer or a wine and then is transformed into a whiskey, a brandy, a vodka, and a host of other things. So before you get here, you start here. A lot of people consider these two to be the same, but they are very different. Bourbon has to be made of at least 51% corn, made in the 50 United States and aged in charred oak barrels. Cognac must be made from grapes in the Champagne region of France. Bless you, baby. My dog just sneezed. And aged in French oak. When you first start tasting spirits, they have similarities, but as usual, I think spirits are like time. You have to measure them together to really start appreciating their differences. So we're going to taste some bourbon and some cognac today. Shout out to my family, Nelson Brothers, for the beautiful bourbon, and check out my Glencairn glasses and my little flight thing. About 2 ounces of bourbon, and we've got the lovely 1738. Shout out to Remy Martin because they make a beautiful product. The term VSOP denotes cognac of a higher level. The first level is VS, very special, then VSOP, very special old pale. Remy Martin has a VSOP. 1738 happens to be a level above the VSOP because we're just awesome like that, aren't we? And you know what? The color difference in these bad boys is pretty striking. And the best way to see color in a spirit or a wine, you want to get a piece of white paper and put it behind. I never ever appreciated how different the two of these look. I've also never tasted them together, so this is my maiden voyage. My patented process for smelling spirits will help you understand them faster every time, I promise. Cheers myself. I start by bringing the spirit to my lips and smelling. Wow, what am I getting? I get a little kettle corn, I get caramel, a little bit of butterscotch, something roasty too. Now, get my nose right in there and it's like, The kettle corn I thought isn't kettle corn, it's more like a golden raisin. That roasty note is definitely there. And the oak is expressing like a beautiful kind of smoky vanilla. It's doing what bourbon does, finishing on that lovely sweet note. We get those beautiful kind of smoky uptones and it's nice and big on the palate. Time for the yak. The nose is giving in just such a different way. The nose is velvet. I know velvet isn't a smell, but the nose is just velvet. The hints that this was a wine are definitely there because you get the kind of waves of aroma that wine gives you. And there's that red berry fruitiness. And now like a kind of stewed peach, or like a caramelized apple. Also, straight up, no lie, Honey Nut Cheerios. So on the palate, I'm getting more red fruit, stewed plums, a lot of plum action. Have you ever had ambrosia? Just like a kind of rich fruited dessert almost. And it finishes fruity, but it's still dry. These are so different, but then they're not. And it's kind of so cool to see what oak does to these two spirits. This one here is kind of more assertive. This is prettier. This is gonna be kind of richer, smokier, and chewier. This is more kind of unctuous and velvety. They both have really dope properties and they're both really, really different. And I'd say that they're the two most famous kind of examples of what happens when you distill a beer or a wine. And I do have to give you one other example. Being in the northeastern United States, they say there's not much we create up here besides hip hop. In the alcohol world, you know, wine is from California, whiskey is from Kentucky, but good old New Jersey is responsible for one of the world's best spirits, baby, Applejack. This is Laird's Applejack 86. The bottle's kind of hoochie to some people. Their 100 proof is even more hoochie. I don't know if I should use that word, but we're just gonna leave it in, that's fine. Applejack is made up through a process literally called jacking. Apples are allowed to stay on the tree. They're allowed to freeze, and the leftover liquid is turned into alcohol. It represents the rebirth of a historic American brandy, and I really, really love this product. They also make one of the best bartender guys in the business. This is considered a brandy. It's made from apples, and this play very, very well together. So when you are learning your cocktail and your spirit categories, you really want to make sure you learn about bourbon. You want to make sure you learn about cognac, and make sure you learn about Applejack. There's categories behind the three, but if you can explain these three and what they are in 8 words or less each, you're doing well. All right, let's see if I can do this. Bourbon, made from corn, smoky and sweet, that's 6. Cognac, made from grapes, luscious, luxurious red fruits, 7. Applejack, from Jersey, made from apples, surprisingly perfect. If you learn ways to communicate with whoever your drinking public is, you will have them knowing and loving these spirits that they may not have tried otherwise. Always remember, fruit makes wine, wine makes brandy, grains make beer, beer makes whiskey. This was a little primer in the journey from fermentation to distillation and the differences between cognac and bourbon. With these fundamental facts, I promise your drinking life is going to be rich. There's much more that we can get into with all of these, so let me know in the comments what you'd like to learn about. As always, happy drinking and cheers.